ready. So welcome everyone for the last session of 8th day of first Russian online embodiment conference. I was waiting this session very much because I want to introduce my, I have to say, partner in crime, embodiment bro, Mark Walsh. If you know this, already know this guy, please mark it in chat box, plus, yes, no, or something like this, just to know. Okay, great. So who's this guy? This guy is a well-known embodiment geek and one of the most famous person in international embodiment movement, business trainer, coach, embodiment practitioner, founder and leader of international training program Embodied Facilitator course, where we work together both in UK and Russia, and also now well known as the author of Embodiment podcast and the book Embodiment, Movement Beyond Mindfulness. This book was published in the end of last year. And also Mark, organizer of international conference. Organizer of international conference, the Embodiment Conference. Welcome, Mark.
Добро пожаловать, друзья. Извините, но я не очень хорошо говорю по-русски сейчас, so we are going to speak some English. So if I speak quickly, please ask me to slow down with your hand like this. Your English is probably better than my Russian. I would love to see more of you. It's okay if you're cooking or stretching or naked, I don't care. So please put your cameras on if you're willing. And I don't mind if you're doing a live, it's okay. It doesn't need your full attention. So the topic of tonight, hello everybody. The topic of tonight, what if the 20s was the embodiment decade? Maybe you could just translate at least our sort of topic.
В переводе на русский тема звучит как «А что если 20-е годы 21 века станут десятилетием эмбодимента?»
Great. I'd like to keep this interactive as well, which helps if you have your cameras on, rather than me just give you a boring lecture about embodiment, which would be a little bit ironic and boring. So what would you like to get from this talk? Maybe put in the chat what you'd like. Just like a sentence is fine. It'd be nice to hear a little bit about what you'd like to get. While you're doing that, I'll introduce a little bit about myself and where I'm coming from. So my interest in embodiment, why embodiment for me? Well, embodiment's definitely saved my life. For me, my life before tuning into my body was a cognitive catastrophe. I was an extremely intelligent, but very unhappy, very unhealthy person. And for me, embodiment has given me a life, given me a sense of purpose. And it's really my life's work now to spread embodiment globally as a movement. So my name is very much associated with this word through the book and the conference and the work Vilya and I have done in Russia. By the way, well done to Vilya for putting this on. Let's give Vilya some love. So blow her some kisses, give her some love. It's a big thing to put this on. She's done great. She's been my main business partner in Russia for, God, since like 1875 or something. At least the last 6 or 7 years, we've been working together side by side. She's the queen of embodiment in Russia, if you haven't met her yet. So this is really my life, putting this work out there. And a question might be, why? Why? That's what today's talk's all about. Like, why embodiment? What would it be like if we had a more embodied world? Before, however, we think about the entire world, why don't we start at home with ourselves? So I invite everybody to feel their feet on the ground or in the car, wherever you are. Let's just do something simple together. And take a breath or two. and notice how you are today. So it begins with mindfulness, feeling how you are today. No big deal, no special esoteric yoga wanker technique, just feeling how you are. Coming home to the body, not just bringing attention, but coming back home to the body. So what opens up for you personally when you do this? Again, I would love to hear in the chat. Vilja, there's some comments in Russian. Maybe you could translate for me.
I will do it as well.
It's a very long one. Oh, is this just my biography, I think? Okay.
Yeah. This is
okay, got it. So what opens for you, or what becomes possible for you personally before we move to the entire world for the next 10 years, when you are more in touch with your body? I'd love to hear from a few people. Trusting relationship with my son. Yeah, I would say any kind of relationship. So if we're not in touch with ourselves, it's going to be very difficult to be in touch with anyone else, whether that be a son or a daughter, an intimate relationship, a sexual partnership, even a good business relationship. You know, Vilja and I have a very close business relationship. And I think definitely being in touch with oneself is the beginning of this, being in touch with other people in a way that's meaningful. Sometimes I've been to Moscow maybe 20, 25 times. I have a lot of love for Russia and for you Slavic people generally. My wife is Ukrainian. And one thing I feel slightly sad about when I'm in the streets of Russia, sometimes it can feel a little cold to me. Well, I don't mean the snow. The snow is one thing. This feeling of being distant from others, maybe being a little scared of others. You see this in many cities, of course, not just in Russia. Most big cities have this in the world, New York, London. This feeling of being people disconnected from themselves and each other, and how that leads to a certain kind of society. This is what we'll get onto as well. So yeah, there's an individual piece here about being more self-connected. For me, that's given me a sense of being true to my values, my sense of purpose, health, obviously being tuned into myself, my emotional intelligence, my intuition, all this piece. And then relationship, as somebody said for here. To live fully, absolutely, to have a sense of being fully alive. And this also leads to a very different kind of society. So a society where we're cut off from ourselves, we're cut off from each other, is a cold one, can be a cruel one. It's not a society I'm interested in really being in. And this is becoming the norm around the world. This can be made worse, of course, by trauma, by various other patterns, just rushing, you know, constantly looking at our phones and computer use. There's different reasons for disembodiment. Some of them historical, some of them are in our own personal lives. And for me, there's a whole different world that's created. When I say world, I mean that on two levels. So world as metaphor, like the world looks different. I feel different about the world. My experience of the world is very different when I'm in my body. Yeah. So you're probably hearing this word embodiment again and again. What does it mean? Nobody really knows. There's a secret for you. However, one definition would be the subjective sense of the body relating to I as opposed to it, as subject, not object. Yeah. So when we're relating to ourselves, our body is the primary reality of ourselves. We're relating to the body as part of who we are, really feeling ourselves. And then we're able to have resonance with other people and even places that we're in. This opens up a different world, both in terms of subjectively, but then it's literally creating a different world. So this idea here isn't just like, hey, I'm going to do some yoga and feel happy myself. That's great. That's a good starting place. Yeah, to feel happy, to get better at self-regulating, to be more in touch with my health and whatever, but also in terms of creating a different way of living. Yeah. Okay. So for me, this sense of being disconnected from oneself can cause a real problem for the whole world in terms of violence. So violence is only possible when we're disconnected from other people, right? The most natural thing in the world is to be connected to other human beings. When we're connected to someone, we don't want to kill them. This is an obvious thing. The same with the planet. If we're connected to the environment, it makes no sense to pollute it. If we're connected to our environment, we're feeling the aesthetics of that environment. You know, I'm sometimes in environments in big cities that are so ugly. I think, God, whoever made this place definitely was not feeling. Maybe that's part of the intention. If you look at sort of Stalinist architecture, you know, part of the intention was maybe to have people cut off from themselves, to be scared, to not be feeling. Yeah. So sometimes we could say this isn't even an accidental thing. You know, maybe there are people who benefit from our disembodiment. For example, advertisers who would like to fill our head with different ideas of things we supposedly fucking need, as opposed to actually feeling our own needs of being like, hey, do I actually need that shiny thing that costs a lot of money? Or actually, should I maybe just spend some more time with my son right now? You following me? Is this making any sense? So nod or shake your head. So the idea of embodiment goes, yes, it's personal. So my life is much better due to embodiment. For example, I don't know, I got a little bit scared of flying recently. I'm on a plane, there's a lot of turbulence. It's great that I have some technique to relax myself, some centering technique to regulate myself. It's great that I can wake myself up when I'm tired. It's great that I have a leadership ability through expressing myself. Yeah. I mean, imagine if I was talking to you guys, I was like, hello, my name is Mark. I am a really charismatic speaker and leader. Ah, right? It's like there's no life. So yes, there's a personal benefits for me for embodiment. It's being able to regulate myself, express myself, listen to others, impact on others. This is a useful set of personal skills, but it's also about the world that's being created. So I hope all of you have had some positive experience of at least temporary state embodiment. So maybe you've done a meditation course or a conscious dance class with Alex or a yoga course or whatever it is. And you've gone, I feel more in my body. That feels good. It's giving me some capacities. I'm relating better to my wife or my husband or whatever. Great. Personal benefit. Absolutely useful. Yeah. So I have this kind of radical idea. What if the next 10 years that became completely fucking normal? What if embodiment, instead of being some weird thing you did in yoga once a week or conscious dance or whatever you do, actually became a society norm? What if it caught like a plague, you know, like a positive coronavirus of embodiment that just spread all over the world? Now, with the embodiment conference we're putting on in October, we're very likely going to have 200,000 people there. So that's a lot of people catching the virus, right? Yeah. You know, my podcast has 500,000 downloads right now. The YouTube channel, 14 million hits. So this is an idea that's spreading. And of course, we don't know how deep the experiences are for people. And, you know, one podcast isn't going to make you super embodied, but it's clear the idea is spreading. My job with Vilya has got easier, even in Russia, right, Vilya? Like, do you remember how hard it was like 7 years ago? Like, it's got much easier.
I can't imagine 7 years ago that I will invite people to join embodiment conference and 8,000 people say yes.
Kruta! It's very cool, huh? Like years ago, we thought, oh, maybe we'll get 20 people on a course, you know? And now it's very easy. It's very easy. Really, this idea is spreading. And, you know, we could criticize yoga or we could criticize meditation and mindfulness, but actually, the ideas are spreading. And this is really cool. This is really cool. There's some risks in that, some dangers. The idea, you know, hashtag embodiment on Instagram and it's just someone's avocado salad. What the hell? I don't know what that's about. Yeah. However, there's some dangers there. However, generally what I see is pretty positive, you know, like, so for example, little Constantine there, the little chap there is going to have an embodied mum. You know, my mum did a bit of yoga. Her mum didn't do any yoga, right? So there's a whole generation that are going to be growing up. I know many of my students from EFC Russia, Embodied Facilitator Course Russia, have children. There's a whole generation growing up. So how is that going to be different? So I give an example, the differences in a generation. My grandfather was in World War II. He fought in D-Day as a pilot. He was bombing the Germans. I'm in Berlin right now, by the way. And he always said he was okay. But he would scream himself awake at night with nightmares from the war. And he died pretty early of cancer because he just, you know, something inside wasn't healthy after the war. And I'm like, shit, that's not good. My dad, a little bit better, a little bit more in touch with himself. God love him, good man. Okay, managed to kind of, you know, get an education, become a teacher. And now it's like the emotional intelligence I see of young men can be really growing. There's a difference in the generations. There's a difference in, like, for example, trauma. You know, I had trauma. My dad had trauma. My granddad had a lot of trauma, World War II. The difference was I've treated my trauma. So I've been to, you know, Afghanistan and Sierra Leone and various war zones. You know, like my granddad, I've been to various war zones, okay? The difference is I treated it because the technology's there, the information's there now. Like, wow, what a blessing, huh? I don't have to like become an alcoholic and, you know, like my dad, or scream every night like my granddad. There's some possibilities for change, and that's a beautiful thing. So let's just be wild. I know it's not cool, and, you know, we could be like cynical hipsters and pretend like, yeah, we're too cool for this, whatever, everything's bad. Bullshit. Things are getting better in many ways. And I know it doesn't seem like that sometimes when we look at the political landscape, but there's a definite trend in society. What would the world be like in 10 years if these ideas of embodiment just became completely normal? Like, there was a time when no one could read or write. So actually in my family were Irish peasants. 3 generations ago, no one in my family could read or write. It's literally only been 3 generations. Yeah. So now it's like, well, you can read or write. That's obvious, right? Everyone can read or write. You know, you're pretty stupid if you can't read a book. Okay. Whereas what if embodiment got that normal? So the skills of embodiment, we could say the technology of embodiment became as normal as reading or writing. And why not? So you tell me, like dare to dream, have the courage not to be cynical. Yeah. Have the guts and the balls and whatever else you need to go, how would that world be if this stuff was completely normal? So why don't you go wild and put it in the comments? Let's see what you come up with. Video, any comments?
Yeah, there are comments. It's already unfolding beautifully with my son and the school I work in. Children in my son's class do centering to help themselves with homework.
My niece is already having some centering lessons as well. Yeah. So there's some British schools using mindfulness, you know, some things are developing. Mm-hmm. So if we stopped being cynical, if we didn't give ourselves the supposed comfort of being depressed or too cool, and actually said, okay, what if this was as big as it looks like it's getting? Because I mean, irrespective of me and Vilya and other people who are pioneers, this stuff is growing. Like every day I see embodiment teachers and I'm like, who is this? But I'm like, who taught you? And I was like, okay, I know their teacher's teacher or something maybe, you know? It's like really spreading. So how could the world be a different place? What if we allowed ourselves to dream? How might education be different?
Right. Yeah.
How might it be different at the doctors? How might government be different, dare we say? How would it be different in a business environment? How might some of these worlds we walk in be very different?
World without violence against humans and other species.
I think we could definitely see a reduction in violence. You should look at Paul Linden's work, if you're not familiar with this, about the embodied peace building and the connection between violence, trauma, and embodiment.
There are several other answers. People will be open and in love with each other, and walls will be much more beautiful. No war, less traumatized children, less children's suicide, more happy people, active work with climate change.
Yeah, so we might see people engaging with environmental issues at a different level. You know, we might see a huge reduction in violence. Will there ever be no war? Who knows? I'm not a total hippie, I'm not sure, but I think we can certainly reduce it. Yeah. And, you know, violence has a scale. So violence goes from the wars, you know, I've seen that shit, I've seen that stuff, but it also is like the little violences we do, the little harshnesses, the little insults, the little ways we're rude, the little ways we're unpleasant to our friends, the little things we say to our wife and then regret. You know what I mean? Like the little violences on a daily basis. The reducing some of that numbing has an impact on our ability to tolerate this stuff. Someone said not so much strict things. This is interesting, that the kind of urge for authoritarian control comes from fear, and it's only tolerated by scared people. You know? So, well, now I'm not saying it's going to be like, you know, super like free love kind of 1960s hippie fest with everybody running around naked at Woodstock. But I think we could expect to see a reduction in the power of fear as a form of control. and you can translate that however you like into your context. Yeah, let's look at consumerism. So consumerism is really a replacement for our actual drive for connection. So we want to be connected. Embodiment is about connection, right? Connection to self, connection to others, connecting to something bigger than oneself. That might be, you know, spirits or the planet or however you want to frame it. And in the absence of this connection, we find ourselves hungry. The Buddhists say hungry ghosts. Gabor Mate wrote a good book relating to this. You know, I've been a drug addict and alcoholic, so I know what this is like. I'm speaking from experience. When there's this emptiness, this hunger, we try and replace it with something. And consumerism is going to give us a lot of options for that. Yeah, a lot of options for replacing it. We'd also talk about objectification, right? So the sexual objectification of people, also the workplace objectification. In English, we say human resources. You know, resource is a very objectifying word. It's a very strange way to refer to human beings. So we could expect to see a less objectified world in terms of how we treat each other, you know, in terms of being things instead of people and human beings. Hello, Julia. It's nice to see you. It's a familiar face. All right, so I'm going to read a few more of these. Change in the fitness industry, very much. So the fitness industry is a machine word, right? It's like, what the hell, industry? My friend Rafe is, you probably saw on here, Rafe is like helping people exercise outside, and he has them climbing trees and running and fighting and, you know, all this kind of stuff. And it's great. It's really good fun. And it's a whole nother way of looking at exercise. It's like organic exercise, natural exercise. Very different from being in a gym on a machine. Yeah, I think we'll still have gyms, but they'll be pretty different. Pretty different. Yeah. Okay, what else? Creativity. There's another one. So I have a lot of ideas. Is that fair to say, Vilja? Just so people don't think I'm boasting, I'm a fairly creative person.
Yeah, you have a lot of creative ideas.
All the time. Every day.
Yeah.
So for me, when I'm in touch with my body, creativity is just flowing. Yeah. So this can be creativity for like art, but often it's for my business. You know, I'm really having like creative solutions to business problems. Like I don't kind of worry about a lot of business stuff because I just solve problems creatively. It's just not a problem. And, you know, a world where everyone's like that is a whole different world. We don't just have a few artists. It's like everybody becomes creative. So for me, this natural creativity that comes from embodiment. I mean, don't believe me, right? Like when do you have your best ideas? I can guess. When you're on the toilet, when you're in the shower, and when you're walking in nature. Why? Because in all of these situations, you're relaxed and you're in contact with your body. Okay? There's a few other options, but they are the most common answers to that question globally. Toilet, shower, walking. Yeah? All of those situations, you're moving your body, you're feeling your body, you're relaxing your body. Okay? So creativity is absolutely linked to embodiment. So how would it be if the entire world was super creative? If that was just normal? Yeah? Okay, what else we got here? More heart. I think that's a nice way of saying it. Yeah, okay. So the difference between fear, new processions, cultural renaissance. Oh, that's a very Russian answer. I love how culturally classy you guys are. So yes, good. Could be a whole cultural renaissance when the human race actually wakes up to itself. Yeah, so how would it be different in schools if there was less shame? How would parenting be different? I don't know about this personally, but I imagine it'd be pretty different. There's some people, colleagues of mine working in this field. Yeah. Okay, well, I think I got most of those ones you got there. We haven't discussed how healthcare might be different, you know, instead of, you know, being treated like an object by the doctor. Politics, we've looked at a little bit. Violence, economics, any areas of life we haven't discussed? Nutrition, okay, so embodied eating is definitely a thing. Like actually there's a whole group of people who are working with this. Instead of being like, you should have this diet or that diet, they're really like working with like tuning into oneself. Yeah, like what do I actually want to eat as opposed to what have I been told from here is the correct thing to eat. None of those diets work anyway. It's called the no diet movement sometimes. Embodied eating is another term for it. Yeah, everyone tells you something different about nutrition anyway, right? Should be a vegan, no. You should be paleo, no. You should only eat bananas, whatever. Lots of ideas. Cool. So I think we covered a few areas. Vilja, anything you want to add to that or jam on from there?
Yeah, they're good answer. Prisons and police.
Yeah, very interesting. So, you know, the interesting thing about when I see a policeman in Britain, that I actually quite like it now. It's not been my experience when I see police in America, for example. There's lots of ways to police. And the police in like Holland or actually, Vilja, were you there with me once in England when we were walking along a beach and there was someone who was like a bit crazy? I think it was you, it was one of my Russian friends. Maybe it was Daria actually. And the police people kind of took the person aside and calmed them down and said, okay, it seems like you've drunk too much, and took this person aside, and they didn't beat them up. They didn't attack them. They just got them away from everyone else because they were, you know, a bit scary and crazy. And it's like, it's possible to do that. It's possible to do policing in a relational way. And that's already happening in some countries. It's, you don't have to shoot people all the time like the Americans seem to be fond of. So yeah, policing can be done very differently. And even prisons, you know, is it possible to make prisons a place of rehumanizing as opposed to just punishing, right? And actually just think about it. Like if someone goes to prison, you can punish them, they can come out worse and they're going to do more crime. Yeah. Or you can go to prison and they can be rehabilitated and come out and not do more crime. That would be nice, wouldn't it? I don't know about you, but for me, that's a better solution. So yeah, certainly the prison industry would be one thing that could be transformed. Yeah, so school topics. Okay, so we've discussed a lot of different areas. And some of this may seem kind of crazy, but we already see it happening. You know, in the British National Health Service, you can be prescribed a yoga class, yeah, by the doctor. This is a thing. There are schools that have started teaching meditation. There are people who are changing their views around food and fitness and many different areas. In some ways, I think this is inevitably happening. It's just the evolution of the human race. And embodiment's not the only part of that. There's other parts too, but I really do see a movement there. And, you know, like I could look at the world and get depressed about the world, but I always feel like my job is to help the communities that I have access with, to bring a little bit more embodiment to the communities that I actually have some influence over. And yeah, and then sometimes we get to do these sort of big global events, and that's kind of cool too. So I don't think I have much more to say about that. All right, why don't we do breakout rooms? So this is enough of my strange English bullshit. So why don't you discuss this with each other in Russian to have a break from English for a few minutes? So why don't we take a breakout room for 5 minutes, and you can say that if I'm right or wrong or something else, it's all good. So you are free to say whatever the hell you want. Vilja, can you fix us some breakout rooms?
Yeah. Сейчас мы поставим, я приостановлю запись.
Okay, welcome back. What did you discuss in your groups? Throw it in the chat. Yes, I'm in Berlin now. Natalia, you in Berlin? Message me, or Facebook message me if you're around. Okay, so welcome back. What did you make of what I was saying? Safety, okay, say more. All right, I'll talk a little bit while the messages are coming in, and plus any questions for me. Now is a good time to put the questions in and we can discuss those. So one thing here, we started with kind of like the big picture, the vision, if you would, for an embodied world. And this can be a really interesting exercise itself, is actually just to sit there for like 10, 20 minutes or go for a walk and really like have that question, like what would an embodied world be like? Because only when we can imagine something else possible can that be created. Yeah. One of the ways we're controlled is just by not being able to imagine something different. People couldn't have imagined democracy before it existed. People couldn't have imagined women having the vote, for example. It's just unimaginable. Yeah. So this is really the first step, is to step out of this. This is an act of rebellion and revolution in itself, to step out of this, to imagine something else. And let's talk about pragmatism as well, practical things. So what do we need for ourselves if we're going to have an embodiment decade? Well, the first thing I would say is you need a personal practice. So it's not enough to talk about embodiment or read my book on embodiment or look at Vilja's website. You need to have a personal practice. This is really essential. So I do embodied meditation every morning. I'm doing fairly regular yoga, dance, martial arts. You know, there's different possibilities. I like to try different things. You may have a very consistent, just one thing you do. And I'm absolutely obsessed with practice on the Embodied Facilitator course with Vilya. We talk about this a lot. We help people design practices, choose practices, change practices if they've got stuck in a practice. This is something we focus on a lot. So embodiment is about practice. Hopefully all the speakers have been saying this. It's not enough just to watch some speakers say some clever things. Okay, this is really important. It's the difference between reading the menu and eating the food. Don't try and eat the menu. Okay, that won't be satisfying. What I mean by that metaphor is it's not enough to learn about embodiment. You also need to do a practice. And this doesn't have to cost you a penny. This is something you can do yourself. This is something you can learn to meditate on the internet. You can take up yoga from a book. Yes, of course, it helps to go to classes and have teachers, but the first thing is your own embodied practice. So this is a foundation. If you want to see an embodied world, start at home. Start with yourself. This is the main way embodiment is spreading, is not actually through conferences or books, is person to person. Just sitting next to someone who's embodied is a gift. Yeah. Even if you're not talking about it, maybe your colleagues aren't really open to the idea, but just being in your own skin while you're being a mum, while you're being a colleague, while you're being a whatever, is an infectious idea. And people will say, they'll say, wow, I've never had a lover like you before. What's your secret? Or they'll say, wow, you seem to be calm with your child. I can't do that. Yeah. Or they say, wow, you seem really powerful. Even though you're just a small little person, you have a lot of charisma. Yeah. And then people open to the idea. So this is the first thing, is our own practice. Second thing you absolutely need, and our consumer isolated culture finds this a strange idea, you need a community of practice. It's not enough to do it on your own. This is a great start to do it on your own. And you know, if you're the only gay in the village, sometimes this is necessary. You're the only person that does it in your town, but get a community of practice. There are ways to do this. It could be online even. There are something called embodiment circles where people meet up and they practice. There are courses you can do. Of course, Embodied Facilitator course with Vilya is a good option. There's other options too. There's other teachers out there. There's other schools we recommend. Different people come and teaching in Moscow or St. Petersburg. Yeah. There's people you can invite to your town, establish a group, have some friends. I've been with my colleagues for the last week teaching in Berlin, one from England, one from Germany, two from Russia, actually. Maybe you know my colleagues Tonya and Olga from Russia, from the EFC community. And it's so much easier as a group. It's so much easier when you support each other, when you can help each other out, when you can challenge each other when you're full of shit. This is so important. So in terms of practicalities of creating an embodied world, I'd say there's the place to start with your own practice and by getting involved in some kind of embodiment community. This is more important than intellectualizing on it and reading all the books. That is, just ends up being a kind of masturbation, really. Okay, so that's some practicalities. Good, practical, Vilya, not just theoretical and dreaming. Yeah. You may call me a dreamer. Okay, questions. Let's do it. Let's practice. Yeah, well, right now, embodied listening, right? Are you just listening from your head? Or are you noticing what comes alive in you? What inspires you? What lights you up? That's a different kind of listening than I agree, I disagree. Oh, very clever, very not clever. Yeah? Like, are you feeling the whole body? There's a resonance. There's a dance. So even though I'm the only one talking, we're all dancing. Sometimes I see people watching and they're like, oh, you know, like 5 beers in front of Netflix kind of thing. So it's like, is there actually a dance of communication, even in the listening? That's why I like the cameras, because I can see you. So I want a relationship. I don't want to just throw clever words at you from across the world. So this is what embodiment's about. Maybe you think I'm mad, who knows? What's the best practice to start with? Good question. Here's the answer. The one you can do. Okay, so different answers to this. Meditation's always good as a start. It's a good foundation. I'd say something enjoyable and pleasurable. Crazy idea. This is the Italian way into embodiment. So think of Italians, they enjoy life, right? That's why people like going on holiday to Italy, you know, pasta and food and sex and football, and, you know, they love it. So the Italian way in is to choose the thing you enjoy, fall in love with it, lick it all over, obsess with it, just do it, okay? write love poetry to it, and enjoy your life. So that's the Italian method. Not a bad method. Julia's eating some food there. She looks like she could get into that. Yeah. Okay. So the other method is the one that keeps you alive. So another way of looking at this, but not Russian. So it's like, what's the method that's going to save your life? It's going to stop you wasting your life. It's going to stop you wasting your potential. What's the method that's going to build the way of being, which will really mean you live fully? That might not be the easy one, right? Like Aikido saved my life. I have no doubt about it. Saved my life, me from being an alcoholic for sure. And I needed something with discipline and structure because I was wild. I needed something with that. Maybe you're the opposite. Maybe you're a little bit too controlled and you need something that's a bit more wild. You need to go do freedom dance with Alex and go crazy and jump up and down. Yeah. So there's another answer. The one that's going to save your life. Okay. It could be the one that's easy to do. There's a yoga studio next door. Your best friend's a teacher. Fucking go to that. You know, why make it hard? So, yeah, as long as what you're doing is some consciously chosen thing, in some ways it doesn't matter. Good. Great question. What are the risks? Yay. Thank you. Notice that sort of slightly traumatized pattern of, but what's scary? There must be some bad things. It's not a bad pattern actually to notice that. It's always risks, right? So I'll tell you some risks. One risk with people who do too much embodiment is they forget about planning. They get so in the moment and go with the flow. They just kind of lose all ability to conceptually plan the future. And that's a problem because we need to do that as well, I would say. There's risks along the way. So there's a period where people get really like fundamentalist about their pattern, their practice. And it's like they become like religious converts, you know, that's a risk. Like everyone must do yoga. You become like a yoga fascist, you know, or meditation or whatever. I've definitely seen that in Russia and England. Another risk is like the postmodern risk. It's like, hey man, no boundaries. Everything's cool. It's all good. And then it's very hard to make decisions because everything's great. You know, so there's a few risks along the way. Another risk is like thinking you're better than people. Do you know Harry Potter? This famous English superhero. So he talks about the muggles. So muggles are people that don't have magic in Harry Potter. And it's like a snobby, oh, those muggles, you know, look at them. So that can be a risk. Embodiment people, it's like, oh, you don't do yoga and meditation? Oh, look at you, you poor people. Can become like a snobby thing as well, like another way of feeling better than everybody else. Spiritual materialism, spiritual bypassing. There's lots of risks, but they're better problems to have. It's like an upper class problem, you know. So a lot of these are just stages to any path. Good question. Embodiment snob, yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah. Also, the embodiment decade is going to have problems that we don't even know what they are yet. Like in the same way as like the Renaissance solved some of the problems of the Middle Ages, right? But it created new problems. And industrialization created new problems. And the information age created new problems. So there's going to be problems we don't even know what they are yet. But they're going to be better problems. I mean, it's better to have the problems of the information age than the problems of the Middle Ages, where everyone has the Black Death and everyone dies at 25 and you have to marry the King of Poland and the king chops your head off. You know what I mean? Fuck that. Like, it's better to have our problems than those problems. So it's going to be new, better, unknown problems, I think is the honest answer. Yeah. Great question. Come on, Russians ask the best questions. Best questions in the world. Russians and Israelis. Come on, what do you got? Do you have any Russian Jews here? That's like double good questions, like Vilya. Hit me a question I've never been asked before.
How start to trust all this embodiment stuff, or how to find some passion in this to move on, to continue.
So the first bit again. Say the first bit again.
How to develop trust in embodiment practice and how to feel it with passion.
Russian low trust pattern, another trauma pattern. Okay, so don't believe a word I say. Don't believe what Vilya says. Don't believe what any experts say. Don't believe what any bloody Indian gurus say, okay? or cult leaders. Test it. Try it for yourself. Any embodiment teacher that says anything else is selling you bullshit. It's not a religion. You don't have to sign up for it. Test it. Try centering. See if it's good. See if yoga improves your life. Meditate every day for 2 months. See if it helps your life or your parenting or whatever you care about. Don't believe the teachers. Don't believe any of the teachers on here. Test things yourself. Don't be cynical. You have to try it. You have to taste the food, but test it. That's what I would say. And you also get more discerning. So there's different embodiment schools out there, different teachers. We can do a lot of that work for you. Like the EFC people are very discerning. However, maybe we're wrong, right? So, you have to test us. Discernment is trying different things, getting standards. We have a whole bunch of standards at EFC for certain things we recommend, certain ways of teaching, talking about language use, for example, ethics, standards around this. So these are some of the things that you'll develop a taste for. It's like being a wine taster. At first, it's not so obvious, then it gets more obvious. So yeah, developing standards is important as embodiment spreads as an idea, I think. What makes a practice embodiment? It's body aware and improves the person. So it's not just physical, like exercise. It's not just mindful. You're not just aware of the body, but it's body as subject. You're developing yourself through the body. So you could have yoga that was exercise, yoga that was mindful, and yoga that was embodied. It's a quick answer. All right. How to unfreeze our cold Russian bodies, but hot souls in the sauna, naked with your best friend. There's lots of trauma techniques about unfreezing and trauma responses. Vilya's an expert on trauma, so she'd be a good person to flesh some of that out. Okay, I think we're almost on time, Vilya. Is there anything I haven't covered in the last 5 minutes that you would like me to, other than telling everyone to come to EFC Russia, which not everybody should, but some people should.
How do you feel the future for embodiment in Russia or Russian-speaking countries?
Yeah, great. Well, I think it's going to be rich there. My impression of Russians over time is that people are actually very sensitive, which is a key thing for embodiment. There's a reason you have so many great writers and poets. There's a great capacity for feeling. I also think you guys are tough. I mean, to be honest, when you've dealt with Russians, most of the world seem like a bunch of pussies, let's face it. And actually that mixture of sensitivity and toughness, I think, is actually a very, very good combination for studying embodiment. The intelligence sometimes gets in the way, but I think can be a good thing, that cerebral quality. I've seen it develop there over the time that Vilya's been, really done very strong work. Vilya's done a lot of work to develop the community there, to develop different people. I think different schools will spring up. There'll be different approaches to it. It won't be centrally controlled because there's already these different schools happening. Some people will misuse it and turn it into a body beautification exercise, which is missing the point, but that will happen. Some people will misuse it and become gurus, but again, this is going to happen. But no, I think like everywhere else in the world, it will develop, it will become richer. You'll develop your own schools and traditions and become less reliant upon Americans or other people, to import it. So I think with the work Vilya's doing in her community and other people, events like this, I think the future is very strong in Russia. So I feel hopeful.
There's one more question. What's the difference between being embodied and being self-conscious?
Well, self-conscious, it depends what you mean. Do you mean self-aware? I mean, the phrase self-conscious in English normally means anxious, like nervous. But we say, hey, she was self-conscious on a date, meaning she was like nervous. Or do you just mean self-aware? If you mean self-aware, embodiment includes awareness and choice. So I can be aware and be like, hey, I'm really screwed up. Embodiment is, hey, I'm really screwed up and I'm going to unscrew up myself, right? Like, hey, I'm scared on this plane. I'm feeling my fear. That's awareness. But actually, maybe I don't want to be so scared. Maybe I want to reduce that fear. I'm going to use a breathing technique. So we say embodiment is awareness and choice, not just awareness. And over time, choice looks like practice to develop oneself.
Another question from an embodied person. How to survive here being unfreezed?
This is a really good question. So once you start doing embodied work in environments that don't support that, And that's definitely true of most of Russia. It's true of most of the world, but maybe more so in a lot of Russia. You need community. You need people who you can be around and be safe with and be comfortable with and express yourself with. And that's really a vital thing, or else you'll be very lonely and it will be very hard work to keep the gains you have, the embodiment gains you have. And yeah, you know what? I'm not going to lie to you. There comes with increased embodiment, not increased suffering, but increased pain. There's a difference. So yes, you will feel more, including of the bad things of your culture, your country, your environment. But you'll also feel more of the good things. And even if you feel more pain, you actually suffer less. So this is one of the prices you pay to being embodied, is that you feel. And that can be painful, I'm not going to lie to you.
Mm-hmm. There's one more question. I'm Russian Israeli. Question about making tattoo, how embodiment movement relates to it.
Yeah, I would love to.
Other bad things, maybe.
What's that?
Or other things like smoking, for example.
Well, let's start with tattoos. So lots could be said about this. I definitely see some people use tattooing as a way to have an extreme feeling, so to feel something, whereas to other people, I see it as more of an awareness practice. And I see some people have tattoos of things on the outside that they should really develop on the inside. Yeah. And people have tattoos for so many reasons, and there's so many ways to orientate to the pain of a tattoo that for me, it's a very individual thing. So I wouldn't want to judge people all the same. I would say be aware of how you're relating to the pain and intensity of it, and be aware of how you're relating to the change in your image externally around it. So they're the pieces to be aware of. I'm not an expert in tattoos though.
Okay. Any other questions, guys?
I think we're almost on time, huh?
Yeah.
One more.
What is your current embodiment practice?
I have several. So I have a morning meditation practice, which includes several kinds of meditation and breath work. It's a little bit complicated, but it's a combination, about a 30-minute combination of different practices. I sometimes do cold showers in the morning as well, or some basic sort of free movement. I'm kind of influenced by Gaga dance at the moment. I'm really enjoying that. I just came off from 2 weeks of modern dance intensive. I'm doing a lot of Feldenkrais this year. My generally evening practice when I'm at home in Brighton is either a gentle hatha yoga class or a Sistema Russian martial arts class. That's one of the things I do. Sometimes I like to hit my friends, so it's always good to have an outlet for that. And about once a week, I dance 5 rhythms in a 1,000-year-old church that's with my wife. That's date night with my wife. We go conscious dancing together. There's a beautiful old church just 2 streets away where we do that. So I'm very lucky. I live in Brighton. But I also, I take what opportunities are around. So depending on where I am, where I'm traveling. The meditation is the one thing that never gets missed. And the rest is optional or depending on the circumstances.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So thank you, Mark.
My pleasure.
How to define if body practice doesn't work for embodiment? No mind and body change feeling?
Well, I would ask, is it awareness based? If it's not, then it's not going to help with that. Is there a community and a culture of awareness around it? That could certainly help. For example, a gym could be awareness based, but it doesn't have the community and culture. And secondly, is it actually building a skill which is showing up in your life? Yeah, if you do something for a few months and it's not building a skill that's transferring into the rest of your life, then you either have the wrong practice or you need some help with what we call the bridging, the transfer. I mean, this is the kind of thing like EFC, a course which is a bit more in depth, can really help with. Some of these things, people have a practice and it's very much limited to the yoga or the dance, and it needs to spread to the rest of life. There's an art to that. I've answered a lot of very good questions in a very short way today, so I hope they're satisfying answers. Good questions.
So what have we to do to make 20s dedicated embodiment?
Do your own practice, build community, and extend with service from there. Oh, and make lots of money doing embodiment as well. Then you won't have to get a normal job. There's a bit of a wild card answer. The hippies don't always get surprised by that one. Make a good business out of it. Why not make it a good job? Then you don't have to work another job. Yeah. So there's a few answers. Start with your own practice, develop community, extend in service, and make sure you make enough money so you don't have to get a proper job.
Yeah, cool. So thank you very much, Mark.
No, my pleasure. Well done for putting this on. Big love to Vilja. Big respect to you for putting this on. And, you know, you were the person who brought embodiment to Russia and really took the courage to do that when no one knew what the fuck it was. And you put your money on the line, you put your ass on the line, you really risked yourself and your reputation. And, you know, people now are getting the benefit of that all across Russia and other Russian-speaking countries. So huge respect for you for having the courage to do that, Vilja. That's not an easy thing. And, you know, for those of you who are wanting an in-depth embodiment course in Russia, I highly recommend the Embodiment Facilitator Course Russia. There's other things out there, but it's a pretty bloody good one. So, yeah, give Vilja some love. Buy her recordings so she doesn't go bankrupt, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Yeah, thank you. And I will switch to Russian. И сейчас в чате вы видите ссылки на ресурсы Марка, книгу, подкаст, программы и так далее. Присоединяйтесь, всегда welcome. И сейчас я попрошу скинуть в чат еще ссылки на русскоязычные embodiment программы. Особенно это будет вам интересно, если вы профессионально заинтересованы во внесении именно эмбодимента в свою работу. Ира, у нас есть эти ссылки. Сейчас их добавит в чат. Мы занимаемся эмбодиментом в России с 2013 года, эмбодимент на русском языке. И у нас есть онлайн и офлайн программы, в которых мы все это разбираем на практике. Мы встретимся завтра в 9 утра. У нас будет сессия, которую... Завтра уже понедельник, боже мой. Который будет вести Виктор Костин, и это будет сессия, посвященная ecstatic dance, практике ecstatic dance. Может быть, мы даже будем танцевать. Я напоминаю, что записи этой конференции доступны бесплатно до 26 февраля, и вы уже сейчас можете заказывать записи этой конференции, если вы боитесь что-то пропустить. И таким образом, и это один из способов развивать embodiment вокруг себя. Да, поддерживать проекты, которые этим занимаются. Okay. So, Mark, so I guess we can finish the session right now. We can stop recording.
Yeah, unless you want a poem.